keep that boundary. Don't tell your kids everything that's going on. Don't make them an unlicensed therapist, unlicensed, unpaid. It's not good for anybody.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you thought of when you first saw that post? What was your first reaction?
My first reaction was, did I really have a chaotic childhood? And then I'm like, I'm diagnosed with PTSD, so maybe I shouldn't invalidate my own trauma. And I was like, since we've known each other for, gosh, almost 20 years, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever told David a bit of why the version of me he met in high school was the way she was. So, why not? When in Rome.
Yeah. So you thought to yourself, I mean, maybe it wasn't so bad, but then you started to peel back some layers. And where did you go to first whenever you started thinking about your being raised by your parents or your family?
Literally, my second memory is one parent. I'm sitting in the car as probably a 3 or 4 year old, looking out the car at my parents screaming and shouting, one of them screaming and shouting in a gas station parking lot with a CB radio in their hand, about to throw it. My mom says it was across the parking lot, but little 3 or 4 year old me, I didn't know that. And I thought they were going to throw it out into the road. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my mom's going to get hit. When in reality, I drive past this gas station now and it was a big parking lot. And that is my second memory. And it's that chaos of being very combative, contentious. The words escape me, I'm sorry. Being very hectic and combative to being loving and like a, for lack of a better word, normal family. It's a very hot and cold.
Mm.
And that's what it was always like from the moment we got out of my grandparents' house on up to the divorce. And after that, even when my parents split, my parents do not like each other. And they'll talk about how much they don't like each other. And sometimes I'll prompt that when speaking to one of the parents, which is my bad. But they'll talk about, I know the other parent's talking smack about me, but I'm not me. And I'm like, you're doing it right now.
How old were you when you were, just approximate, about how old were you when you started realizing they were doing that?
I had to be 14, 15. So just the start of high school. And I had an inkling of it, but I didn't know what to make of it like I do now as an adult.
What do you think you would have told 14, 15-year-old Rachel in high school to kind of help her, if you had a chance to guide her a little bit with your wisdom now?
What I would say is find your people. Because I remember feeling alone and very isolated and angry because I felt alone.
Yeah.
And I felt like nobody would understand. And in hindsight, I know I had people, but if I could tell 14 or 15-year-old Rachel anything, is to find your people, and this is what they look like. because by virtue of growing up, and in hindsight, I have a better handle on what a healthy relationship with support looks like, what a friend looks like. And back then, I think I just wanted the attention. I just wanted anybody to see I was there.
Yeah. How do you think you found out what a healthy relationship looks like? I'm sure that you said there was moments in which it felt like there was deep love and stuff with your parents, but with all the chaos, it kind of, I imagine, tainted it a little bit. Where do you think you got from 14 years until now, how'd you get order from the chaos?
In short, therapy and medication. But I think when it first started to click for me that things were not normal, I would have moments of realizing something was different because I would tell my story to my buddies online, and they go, "Wow, how are you even still alive?" And I'm like, I don't know. But I remember very clearly one of the best therapists I've ever had describing my relationship with one of my parents to them, and them going, "Hold on, you interact how with this parent?" And I'm like this. And they're like, "Honey, that's codependency." And I'm like, "Oh, no, it's not. Everybody does this with their parents." And then meeting people who know they don't. And I'm just like, well, that's something.
Yeah. Whew. How did you take the step to get therapy, to see somebody to try to sort the stuff out?
I remember, because I've been through a few therapists. I've been in and out of therapy since 14. 14, 15, just about.
Was that your parents' decision?
I went specifically to my mom and said at the time, "Hey, I think I saw people that were there. This is freaking me out. Can we talk to somebody?"
You're 14 or 15 years old. You're starting to really get a grasp on some of the frustrations you have here, and feeling pretty overwhelmed in a lot of ways. Has that relationship changed from that time until now?
Yes. With my father, I do not speak with him. We said maybe 2 sentences at Thanksgiving this last year, and it was the first words we'd said to each other in at least 2 or 3 years. He's not, we've got each other blocked on social media. I've got his phone number blocked, and I don't think he even remembers mine. But with my mother, it's still a careful balance of finding that boundary and respecting it. And that's something I'm still working on. And I think a lot of people in my boat, same boat or similar boats, would say that it's something that you're not going to have perfected right off the bat, or even 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. You're going to be figuring it out literally for the rest of your life, and playing it somewhat by ear.
Yeah. You said that the thing that you're working with your mom is still setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about the boundaries and your mom growing up?
Okay.
If you want. I mean, of course, this is all.
I'm trying to think of how to put this tastefully for the nature of this podcast. But to put it simply, from the time we left my father, me, my mom, and my sister, and we're living next to my grandparents, I was kind of like an unpaid therapist. And that's something no child should have to deal with. Which I love my mama to death. Don't get me wrong, I respect her. But I did not need to know some things. And it wasn't to the level my father would share things with me. But I would get emotionally involved and want to solve things for my mother. And I'm just like, I'm not her parent. This is where boundaries come in. I'm not her parent. I am the adult child. She is an adult. She is capable of handling her own life. And I love her very much, enough to respect that she can handle her own problems. And taking that step back and going, like when she describes stuff to me, stuff that's been stressing her out, and go, oh, I hate you're going through that. I know that's stressful. Ugh, it's hard. And like my therapist would say, it's natural to feel a little guilty. But it's not your problem to fix.
Why do you think you feel guilty?
I think I feel guilty because for so many years, like after the separation and the divorce, it was like all we had was us three plus my grandparents.
How old were you at that point?
I had just turned 13 the previous November when my mom left my dad. It was February 26, 2003 when she left. It was particularly traumatic. So I don't remember the day of the week, but I remember the date and I remember the weather.
Yeah. Why do you think you remember the weather?
I guess in the stress of everything going on, my mind was searching for anything to lock on to give me some sort of sense of stability.
Yeah.
Because I remember grandparents picked me up from school that day, picked me up early, and I was mad because I remember we were leaving before something that I wanted to do in school. And I don't remember what it was, but I remember I was like, man, I got to leave early. What's going on? And at the same time, being very worried because back around this time, there had been an ice storm in Randolph County, one of the worst in Randolph County's history. And I remember there was a tree that was bent over near the side of the house my parents' bedroom was on. And I remember thinking, geez, I'm going to miss this thing in school. But oh my gosh, what if that tree fell on the house? Is Daddy okay? And then just my brain locked onto that. And I remember we ate Hardee's on the way to the shelter. And I remember there was an ice storm that night because I woke up and I remember looking out the window of where I slept and there were icicles going sideways off the power lines. and just, I guess I kind of traumatized myself by trying to remember everything. So I knew I wasn't imagining what was going on.
Mm. Was this the first time that something like that had happened?
Um, the first and only time my mom ever left. Because she had talked about leaving before my father had said some things, which I will not go into detail on, that made her very worried for her and our safety
Yeah.
with if she left.
This stuff's awful.
Yeah. It's no, it goes
It's a lot
without
on a
saying.
kid too.
Oh, yeah, because no child should ever have to go through that. And, you go through thinking, oh, I have it bad, but people out there have it worse. And it's this ugly cycle of invalidating your own trauma and then invalidating your own trauma and then like sort of, I don't know if I'd say reliving it, invalidating it and then not dealing with it the best way you could.
I mean, I imagine you don't have a lot of control at that age.
Almost none.
What else can you do except for run? But the only way
Right.
you can.
It's just, I've described it as surviving to spite the world
Yeah.
because, like my friends in my gaming chat said, we don't know how you're still alive. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know either. I just know I get hit, and the only thing I know to do is put one foot in front of another. And that's not the best thing when you've gone through one of the worst things a kid can go through. It's not healthy. Because
You said,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
You spend enough time running from it and invalidating it, and it turns into depression and PTSD and all these. The mind just I wouldn't say short circuits, but it doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't know how to. Who did I have to go to for help?
Yeah. Do you think now, knowing as an adult, can you think of some of the things that you may have been trying to communicate to the people around you that maybe like a teacher or a family member could hear your story and say, uh, maybe I should look out for somebody, kind of putting out these signals? Is there anything that you feel like signals you put out there that were unanswered?
I don't know that I did, because I know that one of my parents misinterpreted, like in the early days of social media, I had a really dramatic username because I was going through my emo goth punk phase, and they misinterpreted it, and I just sort of, I kind of closed myself off, and I still to this day have trouble in some respects putting out those signals when I'm struggling. But my advice for anyone who has children in their life who maybe have gone through what I've gone through, the best thing you can do is be there. Check in on them, please, because they may not know how or have the words even to reach out with, because I sure didn't. It's just I went through cycles of wanting to scream from the mountaintops, and then when I did hint at it, and I posted something on MySpace back in the day, it got misinterpreted, and I'm like, you know what? I'll never share anything again. So just be there, check in on them, and if you think you might not understand what signals they're putting out, just listen, but ask, hey, what do you mean by that? Could you elaborate? And just don't listen to respond, listen to understand.
Do you feel as though, not to put words, I apologize.
It's okay.
Trying not to just blurt out questions without thinking. So growing up, whenever you express some kind of frustration or struggle, how did your parents react?
One of them would say, "Dog with a bone, Rachel, dog with a bone." And it was very dismissive. It's exactly as dismissive as it sounds. And it's just like, that was one parent, and the other one, I don't remember them responding, just by virtue of, and this will make it easy to figure out which one's which, but the one that didn't, I don't have memories of them really responding, is the one I had visitation with. So one parent could be dismissive, one I just don't remember.
So you felt like you couldn't express yourself in your own household? Like if you had troubles, if you were struggling?
Yeah. So
Did you have anybody you could go to for that?
my therapist and my
You were
gaming
younger.
chat that I went to my gaming chat, who I still keep in touch with to this day.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that I would. No, because I didn't start talking to them until like I went to Charlotte for a year. But like I would have people I would chat with online off and on, but it was so infrequent that I didn't have anybody. The youth leaders I had at about that age,
About
which
which age, just to clarify?
like 14, 15, 16,
Sure.
who knew my story, who basically knew my mom's side of the family. When I did explain to them what was going on, hold on just a moment. What do you want? Drink? Pepsi? Hold on just a minute.
Josh.
Yeah.
Hi, Josh.
David says hi, Josh. What drink do you want?
Open the refrigerator, you'll see.
I will need to turn around.
Definitely leaving this in there. This is how I'm gonna start the video. Just this.
Okay, the coffee.
Yeah, give me one too while you're at it, please.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It happens. It's very likely that I'll have a dog or a kid like come and interrupt me at some point. You talk a lot about your being the 14, 15. Seems to be a really like strong memory time from that.
Yeah.
Do you remember much of your more early childhood?
Yes and no. It comes in bits and pieces. because for years I couldn't remember it. Because like every time I would try to think on it, it was just like, boop, nothing. And that was in the early days of my diagnosis. And now that I am in a better place, you know, and I use the term better loosely, thinking back, I can remember some things from like my mom and dad, mom's side of the family, dad's side of the family, my maternal grandmother's side of the family. And that, you know, from those sides of the, you know, from all those different sides and bits and pieces, they'll, you know, those memories will come and go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's due to trauma or due to age or what. But my first 8 years were mostly calm, other than extended family drama that was like, I didn't run into them except maybe a couple times a year, so I didn't really think about it until I was like directly faced with it.
So what happened after the 8th year? But something started then?
My dad got tired of my grandmother sending him outside to smoke. So he went and found land, and I don't know if he wanted it to be close or my mama wanted it to be close, but he found land 4 minutes from my grandparents' house and put a trailer on that land. And he's like, I've got my own house I can smoke in now. And basically when I was 8, into my 2nd grade year, wasn't even really, I don't think it was really the end of my 2nd grade year, but we moved and I finished out the year at Fairgrove and then started at Tabernacle the next year. And now that I mentioned that, I immediately remember my first night of school at Tabernacle, because Davidson County didn't teach cursive until the 3rd grade, and Randolph County did it in the 2nd grade. My very first night of school at Tabernacle, I had to learn how to write in cursive, or else I don't know if they would have flunked me or what. But I have very strong memories of sitting at the kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night. And to this day, that is why my cursive letter F is terrible. And I will not do cursive unless it's my signature.
Is there anything that you think that you know now that would have helped make things easier for you when you were younger?
I don't know that I would say there would be, but like at the same time, just if I would have like A, had friends, B, been able to regulate emotions better, and just realize that before all the trauma started happening, just things like moving were normal. Happens to everybody, happens to every kid. New school, a lot of people go through that, but you know, when you're so isolated, it feels like you're the only person in the world that anything has ever happened to. And if I would have known how to communicate a little bit better and reach out to people, I think I would have felt a little less isolated and alone, even as a 3rd grader. Because I think it took me, I didn't develop my first friend at school until I think later in the 3rd grade year. And it was outside of school at Girl Scouts. And then I made my first in-school friend in 4th grade. Because I remember I would spend recess off in one corner of the Tabernacle Elementary School playground by myself. And this one nosy 3rd grader, bless her heart, Heather, just came over there and said, "Hey, do you like Sailor Moon and professional wrestling?" I'm like, "What are these things? Why are you over here?" And thus began a great friendship that lasted all of 3 years. If I would have just known how to like socialize better, that would have solved a lot of things. Which, given the fact that we suspect I'm autistic, that tracks.
You think that's something that can be taught, or something that's just circumstantial, or
A
are
little
your
bit of
parents
both.
were your parents real social when they went out? Did they talk to people?
No, not really. I don't remember going to anybody's house really to hang out very much.
Mm,
If it wasn't family,
yeah.
I don't recall meeting any of their friends until later in life. Like, we just did not get out much.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like we stayed in the house all the time. We did go to the mall and different places. We went to the flea market, but just
Sure.
like, I don't remember hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a reality for a lot of people.
Yeah. Which you can't plan I will say you can't plan those kind of things, but so in some respect it is circumstantial, but in some ways you have to do kind of teach it a little. Maybe not directly, but it's like it feeds off of each other.
Yeah. Would you say your sister had a similar experience growing up?
No, because she was born in 1999 after we had already moved out of my grandparents. And she was three and a half when my parents split. So this is, even though she spent like the first 3 years and change in that, in the trailer, I doubt she remembers very much of it. So just being us 3 for the longest time was all she knew.
Mm.
Which, she did go through some of the same trauma and abuse. And I know she was on medication for it for a little while. But I think we went through the same household, but had different experiences, both pretty traumatic. Like, to the point, one visitation weekend I did not go to, she came back. I looked at her and I'm like, something seems off here. And I said, did something happen this weekend? You better not lie to me. And she just looked at me and started crying. And I don't know what happened. I don't know, or either I don't remember, but like the look on her face, I could just tell, because she's autistic. She's actually diagnosed. And just something about her, spidey senses were tingling.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with your sister versus now?
To put it, the easiest way I can put it is I became like a father figure, because my mom, it was just me, my mom, and my sister, and I'm 10 years older than her almost. And I'm very defensive, and I'm having to unlearn that now, because let me put it to you this way. My first tattoo that I got while I was living with TJ and Maggie was her handwriting and mine, and it's on my right calf. And the way I put it to my father when I showed him, he asked, "Why'd you get it there?" And I said, that's the foot I'm going to stomp somebody's face in with if they ever hurt her.
Mm.
That exact, well, not those exact words, but that exact tone.
Yeah, yeah.
And whenever I have been in public with her and been, she has pointed out, like when I was in community college, I remember running into one of her classmates and just being intensely aware, because I knew she was getting bullied at school, and just having to like sort of pull myself back, because I'm just like, if someone hurts my sister, I may snap. And now that she's 20, 23, almost 24. She's still living at home. We don't talk very much, but now I'm having to unlearn that defensiveness, and it is very difficult because, and here's that guilt again, because I feel like she's my sister. I feel like if I don't do something, I'm abandoning her in some respect, which is very difficult.
And you feel
It's
like
not, we don't talk like normal siblings because, again, the autism, but it's very much a my siblings keeper kind of vibe.
how do you think all this has affected you, like as a person these days? I mean, how much of this do you think shapes your personality and your wants and needs, and
It still affects me, because at my next to last job, my personality is such that one of my supervisors described me as the mom rep, where if anyone gave my reps, even though I was just a casual rep one, I wasn't leadership. The joke was, if you messed with somebody on my team, I was going to climb every rung in the ladder, a chain of command, and make your life difficult. And I am very, very defensive of the ones I love. And it's honestly a little weird. So, in learning how to step back from certain relationships, like, one of my parents and my sister, it's just like I'm having to learn how to step back in other relationships and like adjust my personality like that as well. And it's difficult, but it's doable. Learning how to bite my tongue has been a struggle.
What is your best guess? What motivated each of your parents? Like, what do you think their life and their perspective was like, and their responsibility towards you and your sister?
It felt like toward the end, the motivation was being right. And they do very much care for both of us the best way they know how. It may not be shown in the best ways, but who's perfect at showing love? But just that struggle with that power struggle between them, and feeling, using us as kind of like pawns, did not make matters better. So anybody in that same situation, please, please remember to keep that boundary. Don't tell your kids everything that's going on. Don't make them an unlicensed therapist, unlicensed, unpaid. It's not good for anybody. Because my mom would tell me everything that my dad was doing, and then my dad would tell me everything that my mom was doing, and I'm like, I don't need to know any of this.
Yeah. How old were you when you first felt like they started doing this?
Had to be about 15, 16.
Yeah.
When I really became conscious of it, because the first specific memory of this is my dad paid child support, and I never wanted to know, like, hey, is he paying? How much is he paid? What are you getting? Was it going to? I didn't want to know that. And now in hindsight, I kind of wish I did know something, but like still very much in a child's place, because my first specific memory of my dad involving me in that is he sat me down at the kitchen table, and I must have been 15, 16, and he had a checkbook. And I can't remember if he asked me if I knew what that was, but I did know what it was. And he's like, just so you know, no matter what your mom tells you, and he signed the check, he filled out the check, he signed it. It's here. I'm paying it. And I'm like, okay. I don't know why I need to be here for this, but okay. And I remember telling my mom, and she's like, I don't remember specifically her response to that, but she told me what was going on and how she spent the first check. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know I need to know this, but okay. It's something I've struggled with feelings about off and on, because like it is child support, is supposed to take care of children. It's just like finding that balance of how much they do need to know, if anything. Like I literally told my mom once, I said, as long as it went towards taking care of the household while we were kids, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because she literally told me the first check went towards, I think, tires and something else for the house. Because she's like, you remember when we got tires for the van? And I'm like, yeah, why? And she's like, that was the first check. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Have your parents ever, are your parents aware of how you feel about all this?
To some extent. But at the same time, I don't talk to my dad, and my mom, I'm still trying to practice that boundary of like, how what's a healthy relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Because we do talk entirely too much. Who doesn't with their parents, but at the same time, she's the first person I message on Messenger for a lot of things, which is weird, I will admit.
Yeah. No, not yet. Not me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I knew how you meant it. Validating my feelings, but yeah, I get it.
Do you feel like they validate your feelings on this? Do you feel as though they understand some of the weight of what they've done, and if they've taken any ownership of it?
My dad, no, because we don't talk.
Sure.
And even if we did, I don't know how much he would validate, which I love him very much, but that is a conversation we will probably never have. My mother, is another I've have to carefully mention it with her because I don't, it's not that she'll understand it in her own way. And I'm like, it's not that she's entirely dismissive, which I love my mother, but I'm just like, we both struggle with communicating. And I'm just like, I know I'm just going to not, it's not going to be I'm not going to explain it the way I would want to, with the words I would want to, and the tone I would want to.
Do you feel responsible for your mom's emotional state? And
sometimes, yes. Which that's something my therapist brought up, my past two therapists brought up with codependency. Because, like with my grandmother recently passing, something stressed her out, and just like my brain instantly went to, this is how we can solve the problem. And I'm like, maybe I need to like take a step back, one, validate that yes, these are feelings are valid, but maybe not everything maybe not everything is a problem to be solved. And especially sometimes not by me, because me fixing everything takes away her agency and just sort of tramples all over the boundaries between me being an adult child and her being my parent.
Do you feel like you had to be the fixer ever since you were a child?
Yeah. Because I think she didn't push me into this, I guess, at least not 100%, but like it's something I kind of fell into in adopting that sort of parental role for my sister. That whenever I knew she had trouble at school, you're absolutely right. I would want to go up there and get to the bottom of the problem. Or like one time I got up at the crack of dawn to like sit out at the bus stop with her because she had bullies on her bus. And I'm just like, oh, now in hindsight, I'm like, there's a line between being defensive or protecting my sister and like, I guess I just like, I don't need to fix everything. Just sit back and react when you need to, kind of thing. That's another thing I'm having to learn. Not everything needs an immediate reaction.
You did mention that your parents could kind of fly off the handle at times. You think you were being reactive to a very quick change of environment?
Yes, because with those quick changes, I sort of, and this is all back to the PTSD, being hyper vigilant, to now that when there's a change, even a subtle change, like my husband will tell you, or like my coworkers will tell you, if something's like, if I notice something a little off, I'll be like, either I will miss it entirely, or I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And I'll overanalyze it. Because it's sort of a holdover from having to anticipate which parent was going to absolutely flip and try to mitigate that and survive, for lack of a better phrase, because it wasn't physical, it was just emotional, mental. And
being, yeah,
it's for anybody being on like that 24/7 is not normal, but for a developing mind, the neuroscience, if you look into it, like like a switch gets turned on and you just never figure out how to really turn it off. And I'll have days when I'm like that, where I'm just like, I don't know how to turn the switch off and like chill.
That's a lot to overcome. And I mean, you made it this far.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're making a lot of steps to really kind of try to combat some of these things that were ingrained in you from your environment growing up.
Because I would always say as a kid, I would want to do things like this so my kids don't have to go through it, which I'm not a parent and I don't want them to go through this. That's another thing I thought about a lot after answering your call out. One thing I said to my mom once sticks out. I don't want to be like my dad growing up. And if anyone's been, I'll tell you right now, if you've been through a situation like I have, it is very natural to have that feeling. And you want for all the world not to be like the parent or parents that caused this for your kids. But you have to come to the point that, it's great that you've said that, but you realize you have to work on it every single day. And it is not a linear process, but if you put the work in, you'll reap what you sow. And B, you deserve that for you. Yes, any future generations, whether you have them or not, deserve that, yes. But you need it for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have accepted that, like my medication, I will likely have to work on that for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And
it sounds like, I mean, what do they say? Knowing is half the battle. It sounds like you're
right.
actually know what to work on. A lot of people spend their whole lives trying to improve areas that aren't actually helping them. So it's
right. And it's
respectable that you've done the digging to try to figure it out.
Yeah. And you may feel bad for waiting to whatever point in life and figuring that out. Because, like, I know I struggle with guilt sometimes because I'm 33 and I'm just now figuring this out. Like, where was this the other 30 some years of my life? But no better time than the present.
Yeah.
It's don't sweat over the time you didn't figure it out.
Yeah.
It'll come when it comes. Just work on it and you'll see the benefits in time. Just know they're coming.
Absolutely. I mean, again, plenty of people spend their whole lives and don't do it. Be thankful that we gotta sometimes be thankful for it coming at all. I'm grateful that that's happened for you.
I am too.
Hear all the stuff that you had to go through.
Yeah, I'm not perfect at it. I'm still figuring it out, but that's okay. I've got however much time I'm left on this earth to work on the rest.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question that you don't have to answer.
Yeah.
If you don't want to, but is there anything that your dad could do to reconcile his relationship with you?
Therapy, because he's got his own trauma. He had a mentally ill parent who was abusive, and if not for the fact wanting to reconcile that relationship with me for himself, because I think that will everybody needs to be in therapy because everybody would benefit from it in one way or another. Therapy and respecting boundaries, because there have been some conversations about who, when we do sit down and have our own family, me and Josh, who's going to be involved in what. And there are some people who will, I hate to repeat the cycle, but I didn't know his father, and my kids are probably not going to know him.
Any final words you'd want to put in here?
If you have had a chaotic childhood, like I have, do not feel like you are alone. The internet is a wide open space full of resources. Your tribe, your people are out here. Seek support online and off. You're not alone. You're here.